Yeah, so the objective here is to try to make some videos to help people get set up with the mod and so on. So I thought I'd start just with admins and setting up your server. So if you're an admin and you're trying to and you're wanting to play with Omega Productions, but you're not quite sure how to balance it into your game, this is just a quick example of the base settings. So at the moment, its base settings were originally all X1, but at the moment we've jazzed it up a little bit where we've got a X3 progression on XP. I'd say too much higher than this and you're probably gonna encounter balance issues. The mod is balanced around X1. We took it up to X3 for our second game, just to try to help players progress to the level range where they can get into Omega quicker. But too much higher than this, and you have to remember that the contractor board in Omega has XP returns on its head hand in recipes to help players get up to level of 300, because the XP table in Omega is quite high, especially in the higher levels. So it's up to admins if they want to have this at, I'd say 1, 2, 3, anywhere from 1 to 3 would be a good range to have it at. Combat wise, you can see here that we've got everything set to 1. We've got friendly fire damage. This is because this is not a PvP server. This is obviously for your PvP desire. We'll test more on that in the future to be able to say something solid. All of these modifiers. We do play with thrall damage to players and thrall damage to NPCs is based around 0.5, 0.6. If you go too much higher than this, Omega Thrall are going to start doing some real big numbers. But Omega's also balanced with Thralls maximally capped to level 20. So it's up to admins if they want to have games that have really, really powerful Thrall and stuff like that. And the other settings here are all as per. Harvest here, we've got it turned up just a little bit, 1.3. You don't want to go too much higher with Omega, because Omega has already built into it multiple extra tiers of harvest, and it's also got harvest kits and harvest stacking kits. So even at 1 harvest multiplier, your return at higher tiers with tools can be incredibly high, anywhere in the vicinity of the equivalent of X5 to a vanilla game. So if it was a vanilla game, you've technically already turned this setting to 5 just by installing Omega, sort of thing. And that's not editing the base game weapons, it's the base game tools. It's just you've got tools now that will return up to that in the late game, so players can play up to that amount of harvest. But if you put your harvest amount on, let's say, X5 or X10, by the time players get to the point where they're using these upgraded Omega tools, their return on something like just hitting a rock will be like 10,000 or something like this, So it's important for admin to keep in mind harvest multipliers when you've got Omega installed, because there's already tools, there's already kits where players can already get really high returns on harvest. Crafting here, we've got the crafting multiplier turned up a little bit. Ideally it's set to X1. There are some recipes in Omega that don't have any dependency to server settings, so they're just going to be the same craft time no matter what you do. And yeah, the other ones here are just pretty standard admin settings and stuff like that. So the other thing that an admin needs to do is, obviously, once you've jumped into creative mode, and you can do shift insert, and if you've got Pippi installed, this will be the interface that you're looking at. If you don't have Pippy installed, then you'll be looking at an interface like this, which is where we wanted to go to anyway. So up here, all that we need to do is type in admin, and we just look at these tabs. When you're searching different things, you can go across these tabs here, and also actually, if we want to make this more specific, we can do this. So this brings up then the Omega admin gates that the admin has to place. So the admin will need to place the Omega Arena gate. The Omega Arena gate will give players, will drop scrolls that allow players to access Delta Omega, Zeta Omega, and Beta Omega weapons. If you don't want players to have access to those things, or later Omega content as well, then don't place those gates. If you want to play the mod as it's intended sort of thing, then yes, place these gates. And I'll show you where we've got them in a moment too. So, whoops. The Omega Arena gate you'll need to place. You'll need to place the Omega Saint gate. You'll need to place 1, maybe 2 Omega Bandit gates. And you'll have to place, of course, the Omega Breach gate itself. The flat version of the Arena gate is just 2 different versions of the same function, basically. But sometimes this model you can get caught on it, and some of the enemies can bump into it and stuff like that, depending on how tight the area that you've got for the battle is. Whereas this one here is much harder for anything to really get caught on, so to speak. It can get around it really easily. So they're just 2 different versions of the same gate. It's the same thing, same function, just 2 different looks. And it's up to admins which one they want to use. So now I'll just show you where we have our gates. I didn't mention the Gate of the Guardian just then. The Gate of the Guardian is the final gate for Omega, where Kot can be summoned. And I'll show that in a moment too. But in the meantime, we have Darkwoods here installed, the Saint Gate in the Omega. It goes here on top of this tower in the far corner, and it's accessible via a gate, basically, that players get teleported up here, and it's surrounded by no climb and no fly features. So basically the player uses this as their battle arena to fight the Saint gates. Just to show the bandit camps. Bandit camps are made to somewhat blend in to their surroundings in some case. So in this case here, we've placed a bandit camp here at the summoning place. And we've placed a bandit camp in this camp area out front the dregs here. Which we have to watch out for, because Funcom have been known to use this spot here for some event things and stuff like that, so this is more of a test on this area, but worst case it gets moved further up there or something like that. But as you can see, it's made to sort of blend in to these Tefari camp areas. In our server, we've set up a town and arena, and I suggest that admins do the same in their games, or if you're using mods that give you arena options already, sort of thing, like VAM and stuff like that. You can set them up yourself. But this is the Omega Arena, which is set in a town called Rockland, which is up in this area. And I've already got a mod where I've ported this assembly sort of thing into a mod for the map, so it could be an option later to just install a mod and have all this up here, sort of thing. So, and there's the arena gate, and we have a good big egress here. The players can warp in, but then to get out they have to use a warp. And the last one that I'll show, that we have on the field here, is the Omega Gate Breach. And this is the gate where players can summon Omega challenges. Now we have it set in this area. It makes the challenges depending, if you're using mods like VAM, you'll have a modified enemy in this location, but the modified enemy in VAM is well below the gearing range in Omega when you should be using the Omega Gate. By the time you're at the point when you're using the Omega Gate, this enemy is 2 combos and they go down. The skeletons around the outside of this area can help provide a little bit of challenge and creative tactics for players to be able to use as well too. For the most part, players won't be able to it's up to admins to try to stop players from exploiting areas where they use these gates or place these gates and stuff like that. In this area here, it works quite well. The distancing on the enemy and AI and stuff like that won't really work much for the player to be trying to like gun them down from top areas or anything like that. They've got to be very, very specific to try to I'm not going to say that because, some people will be like, hey, no, look, I'll exploit the shit out of this. But, it's up to each player and admin to do that. This is where we have it placed in our world. Finally is the Gate of the Guardian. And the Gate of the Guardian would normally, in our base game, the first game where we started to make Omega, this was set in the War Maker's tomb, so sanctuary in the dungeon, but we've since moved it from there, so it's up to admins where they want to place the Gate of the Guardian. I suggest putting it in a closed environment like the battlefields, or like a dungeon. In this case, we're running a dungeon mod, one of my own, that makes the dungeon enemy quite difficult, maybe a little bit too much to have in the same room as a cot fight sort of thing, which is why it was sort of decided to move it away from there. What we've done in this game, Bart, is I've set this realm up, this map stage sort of thing up to be used as a story area for Omega, and as you can see, this is the Gate of the Guardian. We have it in this area basically. I'll warn admin that if you're going to install AOC, the mod is made to work with AOC and EEWA. I highly suggest having both of them installed if you're going to use Omega. I will advise, but that these battlefields, unless you trigger them with the admin and stuff like that, if players enter, their pets and stuff like that will be instantly killed. So in my case, I've got this area set up because the only pet that can enter this area is the My Offspring, and it's also the only pet that's intended to be used with battles such as King Cot and Immortal Cot. So really, this is just a safeguard and works for our game. We've got story pippy triggers and stuff to trigger Cot himself, but I've got the Gate of the Guardian here still for Guardian battles and those sorts of things. The Gate script, however, always works. So that's the size of it, but for admins to get an idea on. So you can sort of see that it's quite a large structure. So admins have to sort of try to make some room for it wherever you can. I also suggest about sinking it into a wall a little bit. You can do that and it doesn't affect it at all. You can blend it into some wall areas or something like that in spaces. The enemy will spawn out in this front area here. Okay, and that's everything. That's how easy it is to set up Omega. Omega is set that all you have to do as the admin is place these gates here, and again an option between this one and this one, but just place these gates and then players can autonomously progress through everything. I highly suggest that as an admin you do not set up shops for Omega samples or any of the content in Omega, or you'll highly shift the balance, the intended balance of the mod. If that's if you want to do that, then by all means do. It's your game. You're allowed to do with it as you like. I just suggest to people not to do it, because if you make Omega samples purchasable or accessible in the game without versing the enemy, then it bypasses the entire reason for having Omega installed. It becomes literally I don't even really, it's an exploit fest, I guess, because there's no reason to have all the weapons and things like that unless you're trying to fight Omega creatures and stuff. But again, this is just my opinion, completely up to you how you use the mod and everything like that. And thank you very much for doing so too. I hope that helps some admins get set up. Okay, that's all. Bye.